industrial IoT projects very often fail even before the proof of concept is finished. Why is that? Well, there are many reasons for that. One of them is because customers are just throwing resources at problems, expecting that to work. Well, it doesn't, even less for industrial IoT projects. I've asked Anubhav from Saviant about his own perspective and experience. Saviant has been in the business of integrating industrial IoT solutions for some time. They do have a way of approaching projects and establishing the maturity of their customers and their solutions and so on. And, it's always interesting to have a chat with experts who are hands dirty in the problems that their customers are having. That's today on the IoT Show. Hi, everyone. This is Olivier. You're watching the IoT Show. Today, we will ask for a return on experience from an IoT practitioner, a company called Saviant that is integrating an IoT solution. And for that, we have Anubhav with us. Anubhav, how are you, sir?
Very good. Thanks for hosting me.
Of course. So you work for Saviant, and you're calling us from? Where are you calling from?
I'm right now in a city called Pune in India.
Okay. So tell us about yourself first, real quick. What's your background? And then we'll talk about Saviant a little, and then I'll get into the questions about your experience with IoT solutions development.
Sure. I founded Saviant about 9 years back. And the idea was to build some industry solutions that are complex for, in general, the customers that build for industries. So we thought we would help them build the solutions, remove the complexity out of it, and make industries a better place. Not many people do that for a living, so we thought, why not?
So what we were discussing to prepare this episode, you guys mentioned, hey, Olivier, you know that people like our customers were doing industrial IoT because that's one of your, domain of expertise, industrial IoT. You're saying that customers don't call IoT solutions IoT solutions. What do they call them? Is the IoT word, something that is not used in the industry?
Yeah, it's kind of a paradox that Internet of Things is more like a technology option available to solve some problems. But the customers who are out there in the field, they care all about their assets, their devices, their machines, people, operations. And Internet of Things is really just a newly coined word to say there are things that are connected through Internet. But people who own industries and who are driving these industrial processes, they are more worried about what are my assets doing? Are they good? What's the health? Are they producing what they should be producing? Are they healthy? Are the operations efficient? So I don't think customers on the other side really use these terms.
Yeah. Well, what you're describing, this seem to be focusing on the outcome, on the value add of the implementation of a solution rather than on the technology itself, right?
It does. I mean, if you're running a business, that's what you would care for. It doesn't matter what the technology is. It would matter what the outcome is. So yes, of course.
There's something that's very common in lots of speeches about IoT, the fact that it's complex, it's hard. Do you see lots of projects failing, in industrial IoT? And what do you think are the main factors for that?
Uh, I can say from where we are seeing, we've worked with a lot of customers of the last 9 years, and majority of them, when they have found us, either through references from Microsoft or AWS or some of our local partners, uh, their current projects were not getting off the ground, or maybe they were trying to do it in house. They were stuck in doing either proofs of concept or minimum viable products, but it doesn't really get into production. In some cases, even if get into production, customers don't end up using the features they thought they might end up using. So it becomes a long drawn 3 to 4 year cycle of trying a lot of things, mostly about connecting the devices to internet and setting up a data repository. But that's a very inward looking focus, and therefore the projects, I'm not saying they fail technically, but they don't really deliver the value that they expected by investing so much effort and time. And that has been a repeated scenario for from almost all the customers that we've started working with in the last few years. Uh,
Interesting. Interesting. But why do you think that is? We talked about the fact that, customers are talking about the value add they want to extract. how is it that they get to the proof of concept? They have data flowing from a device to a cloud. Some, like most often, that's the basic scenario, right? That's the Hello World or Blinky LED of such a project. But how is it that it's failing? Do you see a pattern? Do you see a reason for these projects to fail? Is it the complexity of the technology? Is it what is it you think makes that happen?
Uh, Interesting question. I can draw from my experiences and from the experience of our customers so far. I think a lot of it could be for the fact that Internet of Things has really caught upon in the last 5 to 6 years, especially after COVID. And it's not a very complex technology to use. You can put up a few systems to connect the sensors. There are a lot of protocols available. There are a lot of cloud systems available that easily allow you to give the access. Uh, but I think the biggest gap that remains when these projects get started is what's the end outcome? Who's going to benefit? How much are they going to benefit? And is this the only way to deliver those benefits? Like, what's the efficiency of the ROI? ROI might be achieved, but maybe in 3 years. Can it be done in 6 months? And are there multiple ways to achieve the same objective? Internet of Things is just one of the ways to deliver it. As long as project teams understand that it's just one of the ways, it's not the only way. There are a lot of different ways to design an architecture and a solution to solve these problems. And like we discussed earlier, customers really care about whether the problem is getting solved, not
Yeah.
necessarily what the technology is.
And do you also feel that there's a change in the way they are, in general, spending their money or investing? So they know they need to digitally transform. This is something that, it's not new. We are at that era where it's a given. You need to transform digitally by connecting, extracting and harnessing data from your environment, from your machine, from your systems. You also need to integrate different kind of systems, right? You're evolving in an environment where eventually you have other vendors types of devices, you have other types of data coming from different sources. Do you feel that things are becoming more complex because of that digital transformation? They know they need to get somewhere digitalized to transform their business. Is it complex? Is it what really is having them scratch their head?
Look, anything which is an asset, you have to maintain it, whether it's a human being or a machine. And I think what the last 4 years have taught us is that when you want remote connectivity, human beings cannot do that job all the time. There's a limit to how much human beings can be doing things. So then you have to replace it with a machine. And the moment there's a machine, somebody has to be able to own the operation of the machine and how it performs, monitor the condition, and that needs a lot of technology behind it. So even just to connect one pump, which is, let's say, pumping the oil from the ocean back to the fields, you need to really know how the pump is doing. And if it's a pump which is throwing out gallons, millions of gallons every month, you would really care that the pump is not down and it is really doing its job. So what are the best ways to monitor whether the pump is working correctly? Well, there are a lot of sensors, there are a lot of connectivity outputs. However, when there are millions and millions of such assets and you own a company like Shell or Rolls-Royce, or NASA, then you really need to get control on your overall operations. You don't really care about just few machines here and there. So
Mhm.
are my operations running efficiently? Are they running predictably? Can they continue to operate without any downtime? That's what most of the enterprises would be worried about, not really whether I have an IoT solution that is working well or not.
And that's interesting. When you were describing problems, you're describing them, at least that's my perception, from the perspective of the customer. And that's very interesting. And that leads me to that question. What is Saviant's secret formula? What is your approach to IoT problems? Do you have a way of approaching them that is programmatic or systematic?
Um, I'll try to take a shot at it. Look, there are several industry awards that have come towards Saviant, so I would try to draw upon what the jury in some of those award panels thought was the secret sauce. We're not all software engineers here. There are a lot of chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, and what we do at Savient is not write software; it's solve problems, and it comes from our inherent curiosity about what is the real problem that the customers are facing. And because we are engineers that are not driven only by software, we like to touch and feel things. So, on our office, you'll see there are a lot of devices. There's a lot of hardware that our customers send from all over the globe, Canada, US, UK, Germany, Australia, Middle East. So we have kind of our own lab where we have hardware, connectivity, protocols, software, sensors, and we test them in our labs. We test them here before we give a go ahead. So we have a sense of asking the questions that probably get hidden behind software, which is, what is this machine trying to do? Why is it so important? What happens if this machine doesn't work? So what are the most efficient ways to get this machine to transmit the information that would be needed by somebody in the engineering field, like a field engineer, right? So for example, if there's a wind turbine is not a turbine. It's not one machine. It's probably 5,000 components working in tandem. So, what's the best way to monitor whether the turbine is doing well? Well, monitor the 5,000 turbines. You have data coming into SCADA systems, they store all the data, but then it's not easy to interpret what SCADA systems are saying. So, then somebody has to be constantly asking, well, what do you need the SCADA system to tell you? What do you really want to measure? Right? It's like our body, human bodies are a complex machine. So, if I wanted to monitor the health of my body, I have Fitbits available and Apple Watch available, and these are different sensors, the sleep rings. But at the end of the day, as this body owner, I have to decide what is the metric, why am I measuring, what am I measuring, and how will I know whether this is the right information. So, end of the day, we have to own the metrics and say, is this useful in getting me the information to know whether the body is working right or not. End of the day, I don't care whether it's Fitbit or Apple Health Watch or a Ring. But I think that doesn't get translated the same way when you talk about an industrial IoT solution. There's a lot of focus on hardware and protocols and software. I guess the value design as a principle that we've been using probably is a core element of a lot of our solutions. And I'm proud to say that not a single solution that we've built in last 9 years has failed to get into production and give the value that the customers were looking for.
Nice.
And that's probably because we put a lot of emphasis on designing first for value rather than designing for technology. And that involves asking some simple questions like, when this goes into production, how will the success day look like? When would you say we got it right? And I think we are a part of the journey with our customers. And like I said, a lot of our team members are just curious engineers. We are not driven by software. Maybe that helps.
Yeah, I believe that helps. Actually, I've been saying myself that IoT is where the the world of technology gathers around. It's a place. It's where you define different type of expertise or engineering skills. Mechanical, chemical, whatever,
Yeah.
and like hardware, software. Everyone gets together around that solution. The other thing that was interesting in what you just say to me is that focus on what's the exit strategy, like the exit point. When do we declare victory? When do we say that we are successful before even starting anything? Because that actually is something I'm seeing lots of companies, startups not even doing. They're just like looking at the not the problem and declare or decide when it's going to be solved, and set the metrics for that and so on. But they're looking at, hey, how many customers, or they're looking at this kind of things versus the reality of where they're at and when they want to go. Kind of evaluating the maturity of their thinking, designs, and then eventually deployments.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys are approaching it that way, which makes you successful. Like, I mean, like 9 years was only successful projects. I think it's a good sign. It's a good thing.
Yeah, if you look at it, Olivier, most of the industrial enterprises, and we know that it's easy to call them manufacturing industry, but most of these guys are trying to run operations as efficiently as they can, and it's not just about cost of operations. There are human lives involved. If something goes wrong, people tend to lose their lives, or a lot of machines go down, and so it doesn't produce the output like water or electricity or oil. So to keep that whole operations running, there are a lot of concerns. Like most of these enterprises, they are worried about whether these machines are really going to work 24 by 7 for next 1 month, or do they really need to send hundreds of people for servicing them next month? when is the right time to change, let's say, batteries of some of these things, or
Yep.
repair and maintenance. And these are simple questions that we've been looking for answers for last, what, 150 years. It's been the same thing. It's just that now there is more technology available. But with all that technology, these devices and data and assets and sensors, there's more and more complexity.
Yeah,
And I think,
and complexity that the customers who need to operate these solutions are not familiar with, right? Very often, the operators in a factory floor, for example, they don't want to have to deal with a tablet or sensors, or they don't even know that there are IoT things in there. They just want to have an operational interface that is familiar to them, that is productive, that is intuitive. I've seen in the past, like some time ago now, but like touch screens for controlling robot arms that were ditched on day one because they would not work with the gloves that operators were using. And they
yeah,
were expecting something like just a big knob or something like that. And the companies that were understanding that early were
yeah.
successful in developing solution that would work and be put in operation in production. And the ones that were coming was like with an iPad to control a robotic system, they're just like, okay, get out. It doesn't work. I wanted to ask you a last question. I know we're already at time, but it's always fascinating to have some time with someone who is like in the trenches working on actual projects. So you were talking about the technologies, and the realm is complex for people who are not familiar usually with this kind of things. Saviant is helping them by developing solutions that would go into production for operators to leverage, right? And there's a question though: how autonomous are these companies then becoming? Do you need a Saviant to hold hands, or are you engaging in a long-term relationship with your customers so that they are somewhat autonomous and will just call you if really something is going wrong, or if they want more features into the product? Or what is the actual schema, or what's happening from your perspective, after the project has been delivered?
There are different scenarios. There are greenfield projects where something has not been done before, and the customers would want us to come in, give them a design and architecture, build the first proof of concept of first phase in production, and then knowledge transfer and move out. In some cases, there are brownfield projects where things have been going on for 15 years, 20 years, but now there's a need to re-architect, which means marrying legacy technologies with digitals. And there's always complexity whether you're doing something new or integrating old versus new. So we get called in to do a very specific project for a few months or maybe a year, and after that it's completely a function of whether the customers need us to do more. And we do not get involved in running their operations. We are very good at building new solutions and helping them get off the ground and do so. We continue to build those solutions for our customers, but if they need us to be a part of their team and run it for them, as long as we learn and we add value, we're happy to do that. But most of the times, I think customers know where our expertise is required and where their internal teams can take over.
Yeah, and by experience, I purposely asked this question because I know by experience that a good project is one that the operator can operate. The customer are self-sufficient. They have the tools. They know where to find you. It's like you buy a car. You don't need the dealership or the manufacturer to be here with you to drive the car, right? You're going to use it. The day you have a problem, you're going to go for maintenance, at the dealership, or you're going to get parts if there is a problem that is under warranty from the manufacturer. And I think it's the same thing, right? It's here. If you are an IoT practitioner delivering solutions, your customers should be, should be autonomous, should be able to operate that without your need and support. If when I see companies, especially SIs, that are saying, hey, and then we have this like long-term support, we'll be with you all the time, and you have to pay us that retainer, I'm just like, not good, right? So I'm happy you guys are seeing success by having customers just fly on their own, and leverage the product you're delivering. That's awesome. Anubhav, thanks a lot for your time. I think your time is valuable because you're working on real life projects, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience with us today.
Thanks a lot, Oliver, for hosting me. I think, like we discussed in the early part of this show, as long as we ask the simple questions and usually just assessing oneself before the project starts about whether the team is mature enough to understand what value they're delivering, and the projects are always successful. So I would say it's a age old recipe, where you are, where you want to go, and how big the gap is. Make a good assessment of that, and the projects are usually in good hands.
Perfect. Good final word. Anubhav, thanks a lot. We'll put the link to Saviant's website down there for people to reach out when they have problems and they start thinking about how to do IoT right, how to implement the right solution, maybe without the word IoT in there, for solving my actual problems. Anubhav, thanks a lot. Have a great end of day. And everyone, thanks for tuning in today.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.